Good morning. Will you please take your seats so that we may start the meeting? We're running a bit late already. Welcome. Good morning to everyone. I would like to welcome all delegations, all ministers. Today, we shall have a very important discussion, and you have received here all the information concerning the interpretation. I should like to welcome Commissioner Vassiliou and thank her for being with us here today. And I should like to welcome the President of UEFA, Michel Platini, who has been doing a very excellent job, I must say, with all the things we mentioned yesterday concerning sports as a vector for tolerance, for social inclusion, social infrastructures. And after this discussion, we shall have today's discussion on financial fair play. I should like to thank Giovanni Malagò, the president of CONI, who's the second speaker this morning, and who represents all the sports federation of Italy, and he's an old friend of mine, and I must say he has greatly contributed to the development of sports in Italy. And now I think I can give immediately the floor to President Platini. You have the floor.
Bien, Monsieur le...
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President, in the plural, distinguished ministers, Madam Commissioner, Madam Member of the European Parliament, dear friends. First of all, I would like to begin by thanking you for your hospitality and your kind words of welcome, which have just been addressed to me. It is true to say that they are a sign of the relationship of trust that exists between the institution of which I am president, on the one hand, and the European Union and its member states on the other hand. They also reflect the harmony between the values embodied by the European Union and the vision of UEFA, of European football that is built on integrity, ethical principles, and solidarity. Finally, they also echo the provisions of the cooperation agreement signed last week between UEFA and the European Commission, a subject which I will certainly have the opportunity to come back to later. The reason I'm here with you this morning is not just because all roads lead to Rome, but rather because I want to set out some ideas which I believe will help us maintain high ethical standards in football today, as well as in the sport's long-term future. As you know, I'm counting on your active support with respect to these fundamental questions, because we can achieve much more together than alone, and because progress for one of us means progress for all. On several occasions over the past years, I've expressed my concern about the growing number of unethical practices that are taking place on the fringes of the football pyramid. You know how determined I am to stamp them out. I do not believe that they can just be eradicated by saying nothing, by remaining silent or ignoring them or pretending that they don't exist, but that quite the opposite. They demand concrete action, energy, and collective efforts. Today I won't be going into the detail of any of this, but instead what I'd like to do is to try to mobilize you around two proposals with respect to which I think we should all rally together. Firstly, I'd like to join with you in showing the red card to a practice that came about for all the wrong reasons, which is third-party ownership of players. And secondly, I would like us to give our unanimous backing to a project that was devised for all the right reasons, and that is financial fair play. Dear friends, today I invite you to join me in condemning very clearly third-party ownership of players, of our athletes. And I'd like to do so in the strongest possible terms, together with you. With insidious methods and ruthless objectives, this phenomenon shows a blatant disregard for human dignity, the integrity of our competitions, and even the financing of grassroots sport. This terrible practice, previously seen only in South America, is now sweeping through the whole of Europe. Third-party ownership of players refers to the situation where a player is, to put it bluntly, carved up into economic rights, which are then shared out between one or more investment funds. Yes, you heard me correctly, ladies and gentlemen, ministers. We are talking about human beings in terms of economic rights. The players concerned lose their contractual freedom as the owners of their economic rights abuse the powers entrusted in them and secure lucrative financial deals at the players' expense. They're therefore deprived of their free will, and I'm sure that you will agree that this practice pays no attention whatsoever to the principle of human dignity, a principle enshrined in the basic law by your respective countries and set out in Article 1 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. As for the investment funds that are the owners of these shares or parts of these human beings, most are based in tax havens and are all characterized by lack of transparency. The mechanisms of financial solidarity, such an intrinsic part of European sport as a model, and more fundamentally, the universal principles of human rights are therefore being openly sacrificed on the altar of a highly cynical laissez-faire approach to our economy. And what do you think would happen if the same fund owned the economic rights of a number of players in different teams in the same competition? The answer is simple. The nightmare of match fixing would rear its ugly head once again. The essential values of integrity and sincerity that should be embodied in sport are therefore being scorned, even violated. Some of you have heard me urge FIFA to take action. This is because third-party ownership of players is linked to the international transfer system and therefore requires a global response. FIFA claims to have heard my plea and has promised to ban the practice soon, they say. However, we cannot live by what might be. And what if FIFA decides not to intervene with sufficient resoluteness? Decides not to show strength and courage? What if FIFA's intentions ultimately succumb to pressure from investment funds which are blinded by the pursuit of profit? And what if FIFA's action proves insufficient to protect public order? To call a spade here. As you will have realized, this is a complex and multifaceted phenomenon that is growing to such an extent that it already poses a tangible threat to the ethics of sport at European level today. However, all is not lost at this point. Rather, the situation can still be saved and corrected if we make intelligent use of the legislative and political means at our disposal. On these grounds, I think that I can safely say that you will all agree with me when I say that there is no place for third-party ownership of players in European sport. A tailor-made legal framework is therefore required, and in doing so, we must, or in coming out in favor of this, we must show that we can do more than provide mechanisms. We can actually achieve results. If we fail to do this properly, I'm sorry to say it will not just be a defeat for UEFA, not even just for the sports movement in Europe, but for the whole of Europe. And there is therefore an urgent need to act and respond, and clearly it will not be easy, but nothing can be achieved unless we all make an effort jointly. That said, the urgency and complexity of this issue should not blind us to other problems that are causing understandable concern in the world of sport, especially in the context of severe economic crisis that Europe continues to endure. And that all of this refers not only to football, to the world of sport in its entirety. In an effort to save football's long-term economic future, previously unthinkable reforms have been adopted and even implemented now, and they have proved successful. I'm thinking in particular of financial fair play, of course. The basis which comes down to two sayings. You should not live beyond your means is one, and the other is that there's a line that must never be crossed. Financial fair play is much talked about because it is a subject that concerns football's economic order and consequently, therefore, the governments of European sport. However, I think I can say today that we have started to put football back on the right track. We're going in the right direction. The fact is that this situation had come close to a breaking point, to the point of no return. The vast majority of clubs were heading for financial ruin. Therefore, we had no choice but to take the action that we took. Each of us must measure how far we have come now. the total losses among European football clubs, which had reached 1.7 billion euros in 2011, fell to 800 million euros in 2013. And this is, I'm happy to say, a drop of more than 50% in less than 2 years. And thanks to financial fair play, we're therefore heading in the right direction. These figures are all the more significant when taken in the context of a drop of almost 85% in overdue receivables, which fell from 57 million to 9 million euros over the same period of time. And when I say overdue receivables, I include the money owed by clubs to their respective tax authorities, failing which they must be included from all UEFA competitions, which is a very serious thing indeed. As you can see, I'm quoting these figures quite openly and frankly, and I'm proud of them, I might add. I'm proud that financial fair play, which I consider a moral and ethical obligation, has not remained an exclusive legal instrument clothed in technical terms, but has become a concrete reality synonymous to progress and a driving force for rationality in modern-day football. We are therefore in a process of changing habits that were clearly very unhealthy in the past. However, we cannot afford to rest on our laurels now because the path towards these worthy objectives is being obstructed by misplaced legal proceedings in many cases. Some consider them fanciful, others subversive. Myself, I believe that they highlight the unfortunate fact that the specificity of sport still does not have all the necessary guarantees which we would need in the legal area. And I'm therefore not just asking you to oppose anyone who tries to bring down financial fair play. No, I am also asking you to set sport free from the torments of legal uncertainty by making the specificity of sport a practical, robust, and lasting reality. It is clear that by removing legal uncertainty, we can create an environment which is necessary in order to approve further progress. And I think that it's very important to do so as a good pater familias, as we like to say in France or even in Luxembourg. Dear friends, you've heard me say here today that I want to prepare for the future on the basis of collaboration, of cooperation, working together, and I'm therefore very happy to be able to report on the cooperation agreement signed by the European Commission and UEFA in Brussels last week by President Barroso and Commissioner Vassiliou and myself. This new unprecedented agreement marks the start of a new stage in particular, and it shows that the solutions I would like to see implemented do not stem from individual issues, but are in the general interest of us all. And I'd like to thank the Commissioner once again, Madam Commissioner, for the part that she played in this very important development. Commissioner, you can be proud of the legacy that you will leave behind, since this cooperation agreement is a historic step forward for European sports policy. In conclusion, ministers, Commissioner, member of the European Parliament, presidents, distinguished guests and friends, need I remind you of my desire to cooperate fully with the European Union and its member states? I'm sure I do not. Or need I even remind you that European sport is never stronger than when it rallies and mobilizes all its stakeholders and brings us all together around a common objective? Do I need to even repeat that we need to be able to rely on each other in order to build our future together? You will have already realized and understood that I have come to Rome to meet you, and not in order to meet with the Pope, as we like to say in France. And I haven't come here to engage in any political maneuvering or point scoring. Rather, I want to win the most important match, the match for sport based on honesty, sustainability, and solidarity. This is not a match to be won by politicians. Rather, it's a match to be won by the whole of Europe. So one final thing. In this current day and age, sport tends to receive a great deal of flattery. But, dear friends, let us not content ourselves with flattering sport. Let us love it and let us serve sport as a cause. Thank you.
Grazie al Presidente Platini.
I should like to thank President Platini for this most interesting presentation, and I shall give the floor to Giovanni Malagò, President of CONI. You have the floor.
Il cerimoniale mi ha dato meno minuti.
I have been given fewer minutes than I expected by the Protocol Office. I would like to thank Under Secretary Delrier.
Andrula Vassiliou, Honorable Ministers, President Platini, dear Michel, dear friend Michel. Good morning. I am pleased to stand before you today and to speak after my friend Michel to confirm Italy's and the sport movement's commitment to Europe and to the Italian presidency of the Council of the European Union. Our world, the world of sport, is one made of values, morals, and ethics. As policymakers and as sports people, we have a duty to do everything in our power to encourage people to seek those values and to remove all barriers that prevent people from pursuing them, as well as to support them along the way. This is why we are here today. This is why we are here to talk about financial fair play. Financial fair play is paramount to the development of sport. The rules of a game may often seem arbitrary, and yet people will fight to have them respected. This is because rules are justified by their intimate, inextricable connections with what sport values. Making things easier, taking the fair out of the play, the words, makes those values meaningless. It makes sport meaningless. Nevertheless, economic rationality must be the element that inspires the world of sport. The whole world of sport. Let's take Olympic Games, just to give an example. The recent withdrawal of the city of Oslo from the bidding process for the 2022 Winter Olympics candidature is proof one thing. We must set new standards for the Olympic Games. We must leave the days behind when the Olympic Games would not go exactly as planned. We must forget the world over budget. The future of Olympic bidding must be increasingly more sustainable. A new era must begin where mega events legacy is not a variable, it's a certainty. Economic benefits for the host country are not just only an option, they are a certainty. Benefits for the citizens are not a variable, they are measurable. Italy, our country, my country, proved this can be done in the year 2000, when we turned the Jubilee into a great operational success. And the same happened in Barcelona for the 1992 Games, and recently in London for the 2012 Olympics. Today is no longer the time to waste resources. It's not the time to put pressure on our local communities. At the heart of this is financial sustainability. It's a mantra I emphasize wherever I go. From the International Olympic Committee meetings to our local offices in Sicily, everywhere. As a matter of fact, I visit our local communities very, very often. I listen to them. And when I do, there is a recommendation I like always to make them. In 2014, in actual year, building sports facilities somewhere, anywhere, relying on the fact that if you build it, they will come. It's simply not enough. You must come up with a business plan, connect with local communities, listen to their needs, and carry out a market analysis. This is why, as a president of the Italian National Olympic Committee, I cannot emphasize enough the need at the national and European level for stronger private-public partnerships and for a data gathering on sport infrastructure. Before investing in a tennis court or in a swimming pool, private investors want to know exactly what you are going to build, where you're going to build, and why you're building it. Today is the time to build on our countries in Europe heritage, while innovating at the same time, from energy efficiency to low-impact construction design. Answering the investors' questions and achieving such objectives, however, involves having exact data concerning the territory, its demographics, and its demand for single specific sport, for single discipline. If there is a demand, there is need for investments. If there is a need for sound investment, there are people more than willing to support them financially. To this end, I have made it CONI's specific goal to gather data on our regions in Italy to improve efficiency on investment in sports infrastructure and to raise awareness among the communities that sports projects can be included in innovative public procurement. However, demand is not always spontaneous. We, as public policymakers, are called to encourage demand where it is appropriate. And there is little, if nothing, more sustainable than encouraging people to be healthier, thus saving large amounts of resources spent on public health systems, and to be more socially included. This cannot only be done, however, if our citizens are introduced to sports and a healthy physical activity at a young age. If the culture of sport is promoted within the schools, if sport becomes part of their curricula, promoting the values of loyalty, non-violence, impartiality, and non-discrimination, as well as the fight against doping, violence, and racism. Sport and physical education at school not only contributes to pupils' fitness and good health, but with positive lifelong repercussions, such as transferable knowledge and skills. Ethics is also at the core of the reform of the sports justice system that CONI has introduced over the past few months, because impartiality is fundamental to building a world of sport with a higher level of sport. Sport not only entails respect for the rules of the game, but also relates to respect of one's opponents, equal opportunities to perform well, mutual cooperation, fairness, and sportspersonship. These elements are considered to be fundamental to sport, and are summarized by the concept of fair play. A marathon is not a marathon if doping is involved. A football match is not a football match if cheating is involved. Fair play is violated every time an athlete engages in aggressive behavior, every time an athlete uses offensive language or loses self-control. In other words, fair play is people's and athletes' commitment to justice and fairness. The Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union embraces such principles by stating that the EU should develop the dimension of sport by promoting fairness and openness in sporting competitions. Undermining the principle of fair play represents an enormous risk for the ethical principles and the education values. In other words, the morals and ethics of sport. I therefore conclude my speech here today by remarking that financial fair play must be strengthened at European level, thus contributing to the promotion of sports ethics and social inclusion. Is this possible? I ask. Over the decades, Europe has overcome many obstacles and achieved many successes, also thanks to the skill or vision of those in high office. So it has been. So it must be with this generation of Europeans. Thanks a lot of all of you. Grazie.
Grazie. Allora
Thank you. A change to our program. Before the coffee break, I shall ask Commissioner Vassiliou to take the floor.
Presidents, dear colleagues, I have had the opportunity giving each team a chance. It is part of an overall policy to preserve the real values of football, its roots and what makes it a success. While money in sport is certainly welcome to help its development, it must not be at the expense of the very nature of sport. That is why financial fair play is, in my view, a key tool to ensure transparency and to promote better governance standards within sport. We wholeheartedly agree with the central objective of FFP, namely to live within your means or break even, as it ensures prudent economic management that will serve to protect both the interest of individual clubs and players, as well as the football sector in Europe as a whole.